Welcome, everybody, to week number 2 of the SHL Network podcast. So glad to be back with you. Dylan Ward here. That's Luke Jorden. If you watched episode 1, Luke kind of was the host in that one. I'll be the host this time. We're just going to trade off every week just to give us some kind of structure. But Luke, how you been, man?
I've been doing well, Dylan. It's been pretty chaotic week of hockey all around, and man, I just tell you what, I miss playing. I miss playing. It's really cool seeing all these electric atmospheres in mid-September and all these tight games that have gone to shootouts and everything, and just reminds me of the good old days. Crazy I'm saying that as a 19-year-old, but
Yeah, man, the shootouts, overtime, there's been a lot of that recently in the SHL, which we will get to, and we will just get to it now. So we're going to start with the recap of last week. So there were a total of 6 games. One of them was on Monday, and even though the episode came out on Tuesday, we filmed on Monday, so we didn't get a chance to talk about New Trier Green 2-1 winners over York, and they are now 3-0 in the SHL and 10-0 overall in Illinois. So not a bad start for the defending state champions and their head coach Adam Cheris. I mean, he's 2 for 2 in terms of winning state championships, and he's trying to do it again. We're gonna have a chance to talk with him a little bit later in the episode. But Utra Green, man, just doing their thing.
yeah, hopefully we get to figure out Coach Cheris's secret formula because I mean that team has just been producing so consistently. Nonetheless, a great fight from York in this one, only losing by one considering that they are 0-4 and New Trier is 3-0. So I mean, I give it to them. That's a good fight. Considering some of York's other scores, you'd have to wonder that that's probably one of their better performances. And if they can perform like that every game, they could definitely see some better results.
Yeah, and that was an overtime game. Zach Hipsch scoring the game winner in that one. Moving along, we had that game on Monday, then no more games during the regular weekdays, unless you count Friday, I guess. But then we had 5 games over the weekend, one on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. Let's start by talking about that Friday game. It was another home game for York at Addison Ice Arena. St. Ignatius comes in there and stays undefeated in regulation with a 3-0 victory over the Dukes. And they were outshot 27-16, the Wolfpack were, but they found 3 goals on their 16 shots. And the 27 save shutout for Nick Nocera for the Wolfpack.
Yeah, I know you took what was highlighted right on my board too. I mean, St. Ignatius putting up 16 shots in a game, not very characteristic of them, but I happen to be worried a little bit about York's offense, but you can tell that they're putting up numbers. It's just a inconsistency of hitting beyond the goalie right now. So, I mean, I don't think it's I think it's too early to start getting scared about York. I think they still got plenty of games to go.
Yeah, and we'll we'll dive into kind of each team a little bit further once we get done looking at all these scores. But then on Saturday, Stevenson and St. Viator were both on home ice opening up their season, and both of them logged identical 4-2 wins. Stevenson beating York and St. Viator beating Fenwick. So we talked a little bit about Stevenson last week. I mean, we talked about Fenwick too, how a 1-0 start is just so huge for them in terms of boosting confidence. How about the Stevenson Patriots 1-0 in the SHL and their victory being against the back-to-back state finalists in York? Brian Wojdelko with 3 points in that game. Brandon Smoller, Sean Yurkov, Aaron Mendelson. Those are all guys that have returned from last season. So Stevenson, not a young team anymore, really, and I mean, it's easy to forget they won the state championship in 2022. I mean, they've got a lot of success, a lot of history there, and maybe you could just log last year as sort of an off year for them. Looks like they're going to be a scary team.
Yeah, I mean, just in between seasons, you tend to look at, who they're returning, who they're not. You look at the flip over from 2 years ago to last year, it was like everybody's gone. Like nearly everybody is gone. I remember Coach Wood, I'm not sure if he said two or three seniors, but I mean, they had no veteran experience on their team. And now they have a lot more. You have a lot of younger guys who are now transitioning to upperclassmen who have already gotten a full taste of the SHL last year. So that's going to go a long way. That's why I had Stevenson, jumping up a decent amount of spots in the standings from last year this year, just because, they return a lot. And Austin Morris, by the way, nice game for him, 29 out of 31 that he stopped. Stevenson's undefeated so far. So.
Yeah, right. And then on Sunday to wrap up the week slate, similarly to Saturday, we had two identical final scores, 4-3 in a shootout, both won by the away team. Fenwick goes into Addison and takes care of York. York almost with the comeback in that game. They scored 2 goals late, including the tying goal with 9 seconds left. But then Fenwick comes away in the shootout. Charlie Bastido with the game-winning goal. And then St. Ignatius with the shootout winner in Mount Prospect over St. Viator. And Jackson Steinloff got the winner there. But St. Ignatius staying hot. And now that we've kind of looked at all the final scores, we can talk more overarching about these teams. I mean, I want to start with York here. They just played Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, and Monday. So their
Yes.
first 4 games of the season were all this last week. But I mean, these kids are used to playing in these tournaments where they're there every day, sometimes with double headers. But in the regular season, it can definitely be tough to be playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, especially when the team's coming in, maybe hasn't played in a week. But York, in spite of 2 OTL points, still without a win on the board in the SHL season. And you think about 4 games, it's not a lot of games, but it feels weird to say this in September, but when you really break it down, 4 out of 30 is a decent chunk into your schedule. One more, and that's 1/6 of the way through the regular season. So, York, this is a team that brought back a lot of guys from last year's state championship game run. What do you think's going on here?
It's tough. It's really tough to tell, Dylan. I think the cramming of scheduling, like we mentioned, is not helping. I mean, you look at Monday where they played a really good game with New Trier. They got some rest, then Friday was rough, and then coming off of Friday and going into Saturday and Sunday, those scores are just not characteristic of them. You wouldn't expect that. If, as much as, and Fenwick has been off to an incredible start, don't get me wrong, but would you have expected York to lose in a shootout to Fenwick at home? Probably not. But when you're playing Friday, Saturday, and then already Sunday, I mean, speaking from experience, it takes a total tear on your body, and that energy that you're, aspiring to have in the third period isn't there. So,
Yeah, and I mentioned also New Trier leading shots on goal in that game against York, but for those 3 in a row, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, York actually outshot their opponent in all three. And, you know, shots on goal, maybe the most kind of base level stat in hockey when it comes to who's outplaying who. York with 27 shots on goal per game on average this season. So just not getting the bounces and I guess running into some tough goalies. But
yeah,
yeah, if you want to add
absolutely.
anything more, but
It all depends on the rotation. A lot of teams like to rotate goalies. Sometimes you can get a good one, sometimes you can get one that doesn't have as much experience. But also there's just stretches. It's like any other sport. It's like basketball when you're just not hitting your shots. I mean, it has correlation, and I don't think this is York at its highest at all. So I think they got a lot more hockey to play. They just crammed in a lot in a short span of time, and now you got to look beyond it. You got to look to the next game, and then when you play the next game, you got to look to the next game after that. You just got to take it as a one game at a time mentality, and from there, you just never know where it'll go. So
yeah, not even October yet. Still plenty of time for me
exactly.
to figure these things out. But want to talk about St. Ignatius. I mean, this is something we also talked about last week that one year coming into the SHL buffer period, they finished sixth in the regular season for the SHL. I mean, they're 3-0-1, undefeated in regulation. That one loss in overtime to New Trier Green. Uh, Talk about their penalty kill. They're 19 for 19 to begin the season on the PK. So that's definitely gonna win you some games.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have a 20% efficiency rate on the power play as well. So when you're dominating on both sides of special teams, it is really important to have that. I mean, you look at the Stanley Cup playoffs last year, a lot of teams had to be good at special teams to get to where they got. It really applies to any level of hockey.
Okay, moving on. Yeah, I just want to look at Fenwick again. They're 2-1 to start the year. Good start. I mentioned last week, in spite of the record they had last season, they scored first a lot. And
Hmm.
in their games, they have scored first in all of them, including that loss, and they have allowed 0 goals in the first period so far. So, this is where I kind of turn to you, Luke, as someone who's played this sport for several years of your life. Um, how far does getting that first goal go? I mean, obviously it gives you the advantage, it gives you the lead, but in the grand scheme of things, scoring first, having a good first period in particular, like how valuable is that to being like a good hockey team?
Oh, I mean, if you're a mentally strong hockey team, it is so important to, get the lead first because you're still going to be playing harder than you already were to keep the lead. I know there's some teams that let their foot off the gas pedal when that happens. I've experienced that with my team before, where you think you have a comfortable lead and you don't. So, I mean, scoring first is just, very key to having a successful team. You want to come out the gate strong and you want to go through the finish line strong. It's got to be a steady pace race the entire time. You can't be sprinting the start of the second period and then you're stuck in a super light jog for the rest of the second. You have to pace yourself. And, it really is just all a small artifact of a formula for a successful team, but it plays a big part for sure.
All right. That was this last week. We'll talk about next week, or I guess this week, soon later in the podcast. Loyola starting off their season on Sunday. Besides that, Carmel and GBS still without a game played. They're going to begin play the week after. But I do think it's a good time to, go to our segment outside the SHL. And Luke, you're going to take the driver's seat for this one, but to highlight a couple of teams, leagues, whatever, that are not in the Scholastic Hockey League umbrella. So, what do you got?
Well, looking first at the IHSHL North Central, Notre Dame, Deerfield, Evanston, three of the teams that are all 2-0 so far in that competitive division. Highland Park is 2-1. I will say though the newcomers are struggling to begin with. LZMW, which is Lake Zurich, Mundelein, and Wakanda, I believe, they moved up from the Gold Division to the Champions Division of the North Central. Same with the District 155 Predators, who also did that. Both teams are 0-2 to start, combining for a record of 0-4, but still a lot of work to be done there. Hopping on to the Chicago Catholic Hockey League. Honestly, it's been dry weather over there so far. Not a lot of games, only four in total. Or sorry, only four teams have played in total.
Hmm.
So we're still looking to hear more out of the CCHL. We really don't have any true, stats we could go off of yet just because it's so early on. And then hopping on to the IHSHL West, like we mentioned prior, Plainfield, they've been on it. You know how we said that the Warriors were going to win state? Well, Plainfield must have heard that, and they took out the Warriors 5-3. So
I
I
did
think
see
it could be
that.
a very competitive West Division. There's some very talented individual teams, and Plainfield, we mentioned last episode, they just weren't that good last year, and now they're a team that could genuinely be a serious Cinderella story come if they are to play in the Red Division in the state tournament. Because, teams that I would say teams from the SHL that see a team from the IHSHL West say, I mean, they might look them off, but Plainfield's not a team to look off if you have them on your schedule right now. They are a threat, and they are led by Kyle Sebastian, who has 7 goals in 4 games, 9 points. Three of those are short-handed. And that is really rare to see. That's three shorthanded goals in 4 games. So,
Wow.
I mean, Plainfield has just stuck out a bunch to me so far, and I'm going to continue to cover them before, somebody finally takes the wheels off the bus. But right now, they are rolling. So, credits to them. And that's all I got for my outside the SHL segment. Thank you, Dylan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Plainfield, yeah, I'm excited to keep my eye on them just throughout the season. Uh, and I think this podcast will be good. It'll be like motivation to actually go check those scores. Because I do so much work for the SHL, and sometimes I find myself trying to find the interest to go look it up. But there's just so many good storylines in that kind of combined division space and those other leagues. And like I said earlier, it's not even October. We're just getting started. So that's going to be a lot of fun to track as we move along. Um, okay, so now before we get into the next week's preview, because I think this would be a good place to put it, we are going to have head coach of New True Green. We mentioned his name earlier in the podcast, Adam Cheris, on to talk a little bit about the start to his season, last year's state championship celebration, how he comes into his season. So we're going to cut to that, and hope you enjoy that discussion. All right, we are back, and we are joined by head coach of New Trier Green, now in his third season as the bench boss, Adam Cheris. Adam, thanks so much for hopping on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here with you guys. It's exciting that you're doing this, so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I mean, we're having fun so far. Still getting used to the whole, talking on air, but not about an actual game in front of our eyes. But we're trying to make it work. But listen, we're happy to have you on. Defending state champion. You guys are off to a pretty good start on the season, 3-0 in the SHL, and then 10-0 for all the games you guys have played in that preseason tournament, as well as an exhibition against the Ice Cats. Um, you know, what's made you guys so good yet again? I mean, different players come in so often, especially with you guys have how many varsity teams you have, but that green team just always seems to be right up there in the mix for a state championship every season. Why is that?
Well, I mean, we do have a big talent pool. That's the obvious reason. We have a lot of players in this area, from Wilmette, Winnetka, who filter into New Trier. And then, we also get a lot of the kids who have, gone Central States or AAA routes, and they kind of get beyond U16 and start to look at other options and playing with their buddies and, playing for a very good high school team. So yeah, certainly having the talent pool we have to draw from is a huge advantage. It always kind of restocks itself. Uh, there are like I said, a lot of good programs in the area, and we happen to have two of them that filter to us. So that's a blessing in my mind. We do talk about this within our club, as it's kind of a curse as well for other guys who've tried to move up the ladder, so to speak, and are very much in contention for the higher teams, and get blocked by a kid who comes in. So it is a curse at times as well. But that is a big reason, and you take that and combine it with the history we've had, the winning tradition that's been around for many years. And you got guys who really want to go out there and continue that, create their own legacy. So that's what we kind of challenge them with each year is, hey, you're a different group. This is about you guys and who you want to be, not about what we've been. So yeah, good situation to be in, and certainly keeps us among the top teams every year.
So you played at New Trier back in the 80s, correct?
I did, yes, many, many, many
Sorry,
years
sorry
ago.
to remind you of that.
Thanks, Luke.
But just from a coaching standpoint, going from a player to a coach, are there any morals that have changed, any gameplay that has significantly changed back from your time when you played for New Trier?
Well, I think it's a very different era that we live in now. And one of the big, parts of what I've been doing with our program is focusing on our culture as a club. We've had a winning tradition, and it's something that, like I said, we've had phenomenal coaches. Bob Melton, being, a guy who won a ridiculous number of championships, and just a great coach. And what I was tasked to do was kind of work on our culture as well. And I think that we want to have a a program where everybody feels they're a part of it. I think that's in line with where culture is today. Where we really are a brotherhood now across the board. We're up to 6 teams this year, 4 at the varsity level, 2 at the JV level, and
Wow.
it doesn't matter what team you're on. You're a Trevian, and you support each other, and you go to bat for each other, and you're hoping for good things for everybody on every team. And I think it's a very positive place to play now. We hear a lot of that from the players of like, hey, this is really fun. We're really excited for everybody. Lessons you learn along the way, you learn from everybody, from the coaches I played for, both as a youth hockey player at Winnetka, up through New Trier, playing at prep school, playing in college, and coaching with guys along the way. You learn a lot of different things from them, not just in terms of like strategy and X's and O's, but also in, what gets the most out of a team, what motivates kids. And, I've always thought of myself as a really good motivator in creating a really good bond between the players. I always found that the teams I played for that were connected or close were the teams that went really far. The teams that had a superstar, but there was no buy-in, were teams that fizzled out pretty early. So we've kept an eye on that and really tried to establish a bond every year that keeps us strong, keeps everybody motivated. It's a long season. We go 70 plus games, lots of tournaments, lots of travel. It is a long season. Dylan can attest to that after seeing us at the end of last year. You get worn out. Guys are tired, and how do you stay strong the whole time? So it's continuously motivating them on my end to keep them, chasing the carrot, so to speak.
Talking about the rest thing, I mean, too. I mean, high school hockey, the schedule's kind of all over the place. It's not like football where it's you play Friday night and then you have the week to prepare for the next game. So you guys are coming off most recently a back-to-back versus St. Ignatius and York, both on the road, and both games went beyond regulation as well. Then you don't have a game again until this Thursday when you play Ignatius again. So, I mean, what kind of goes into preparing for a game when you haven't played in over a week versus, when you just played last night, less than 24 hours before?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you say that. It's those were tough games, and we played at Lake Forest that Wednesday, and then we were
Yeah.
basically off until Sunday. And it's hard on a Sunday night to go down to the city and play. It's a big challenge, but we like to challenge ourselves. So to have that challenge and then win the game the way we did, and then go out the next night and have to go out to York at 8 o'clock on a Monday is also tough. So it's for us the challenge was, hey, it's adversity. How are we going to overcome it? We were off this past weekend because it's homecoming, and we take that weekend off, which I think is good. We want the kids to support the school. We want them to be out there, have some fun, and be kids. We don't want them to be just hockey. So it's a price that we know we're going to have to pay in practice today, tomorrow, leading up to this week. But yeah, we have Iggy Thursday and GBN Friday and Fenwick on Sunday. So it's, like you said, you go through these phases in a schedule where it's like you could have a week of nothing and then all of a sudden 3 games in 4 days against 3 really tough teams. So yeah, we'll have a sharp practice hopefully today, really try and get the legs going again, then work in tomorrow for game prep.
Looking back at the preseason invitational, you guys outscored your opponents 39-6, ended up winning the whole thing. What were some strengths, just gameplay wise, that stood out to you early on in the season?
Well, what I've been, talking about with our group and with anybody who's asked is just the depth we have this year. In the last 2 years, you could say, hey, we had a really strong goaltending or really strong offense or really strong defense. This year we're strong in all 3 categories, and I mean really strong. It's like I haven't had depth like this where you can truly put anyone out there in any situation, and you're feeling very comfortable with it. The biggest challenge for us early on is going to be finding that gel, that or chemistry between lines as we work guys around and try and get a feel for who fits best with who. You're going to have games that are really tight, where we feel we can do a lot better. And you're going to have games where you see what we're talking about and what we're thinking, where they just go out there and absolutely light someone up. Our goal is to play, similarly to how we did in the start of games against, say, Stevenson and GBS, where we just come out of the gates flying. We do not like having slow starts, but we've had them. And again, that's part of figuring out who you're playing with and knowing tendencies of one another. But I loved once we kicked it into gear. I mean, that's what we feel we have. The question is, will we be able to bring that out on a nightly basis? And as a coach and the hockey director, that's my goal, is to find a way to see that every night where we go out, we're never flat in the beginning of a game and get all over somebody. That's a key thing for New Trier.
I want to talk about something too. This is kind of a stat that we touched on in the last podcast. And since you took over as head coach for New Trier, you guys got knocked out in the semifinals last year of the Thanksgiving tournament. But besides that, you have never not been the champion of any tournament, I mean, besides nationals, in Illinois that you have participated in. You can break it down as far as you want. SHL regular season, SHL playoff state. You guys go down to Arizona, I know, and it's honestly, it's just impressive. The mentality coming into any tournament, it's almost like every game is valued as the same, and it's like every game is considered like a big state playoff game or even a state championship game. I mean, do you feel that you go into every game you play with the same mentality?
Well, I do. I'll start by saying, there was one other tournament we didn't win, and that was I guess it's the CCM now. That my first year we lost that in the semifinals. We had a lot of guys out, and we
Hmm.
didn't do particularly well. We lost in the semifinals of that one. So, yeah, I got to admit that, Dylan, as much as I would prefer not to. But no, I think our team is, that's where we find our swagger, so to speak. When we get super competitive, it's a different mentality. I wish that it came out in every single game, but when you play a 70 game schedule, it's hard to find it every night. But when you're in a tournament and you have that focus for, call it 3 or 4 days, we're used to going late into tournaments. We're used to playing 5 or 6 games, making it to the semis or finals. And that's kind of when we rise up the most. That's where everyone gets hungry. They can feel it. So there is kind of a different level that we kick in. It suits us really well. Again, you want to be in a good position heading into state and SHL playoffs. And we feel like if we're near the top or at the top of that, we really can kind of control our destiny. And we know we'll have that energy there to want to give it everything we got in that shorter period of time. But yeah, it is a different mentality. It's fun to see kids all have it, and I'm saying it's kids in general who play hockey across the board. You start to get in these tournaments. The longer you go, the more you have that taste for victory. You've won a bunch of games, and you want to win it all. So I think that's something that you hit on. It's a really good point. Our guys want to win tournaments. They want to win whatever they're in. Second place isn't good enough. Not that I say that, but in their minds, it's we want to match up, and I think each New Trier team challenges themselves to be the best New Trier team. We've had some great teams, over the decades and decades of amazing teams. So it's hard to set yourself apart from the pack, but that's what they try and do.
Last question on my behalf. There's still three teams who have not played a game SHL conference wise yet. That's Carmel, Glenbrook South, and Loyola. Do you feel that you guys getting a jump out on all your games, preseason invitational, SHL, is crucial to getting the rust off as quick as possible?
Well, I love the preseason for that very reason, Luke. It's a good point. You want to get in there and see what you got, and alter your team as you have to do. There's a lot of tweaks we make between the beginning of the season and call it our 11th game coming up. It'll be a different look. There's things you get to see early on where again, no team's really set right now. Everyone's figuring out what they have, how they're going to look, what they're going to do. I do think it's kind of an advantage, but I also get where these other teams come from. I mean, we have a couple of players that play other sports, so you're missing them. I know certainly in the case of like a Loyola where their football players, can't really participate in hockey until it's done. It's different for each school. So, I totally respect that and know that that's what they have to do versus us where, we'll still move forward. Guys can still come and practice, but they're going to sit out some games. But we definitely like getting that early sense of who we are, seeing what, how we want to line ourselves up against teams. I don't take the performance of anybody we play lightly ever, but even in those early games, it's like I don't put a whole lot of weight on it. I know that they're going to tweak their programs as well. You've got a lot of great coaches in the league, a lot of great teams in the league that are making adjustments every game. So we know we'll see that. The teams that are just, starting to roll, they're getting games in. Like I know Loyola was, out in their tournament this past weekend. I know Viator had some games, and teams are getting going. Carmel was in the preseason, but I expect them all to hit the season, ready to go. They're not going to come out there light. They're not going to look rusty as far as I'm concerned.
All right, last one for you, Adam. Just want to take a look back at last season, the state championship run, nationals. I thought it was pretty fun that you guys ended up playing New Trier. Was it blue or white in the
Blue.
state? Yeah, blue. Yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah, just I mean, you've been the coach for 2 years. You're 2 for 2 in terms of winning state championships, and then just that nationals experience. I was out there with you guys doing some coverage on the Instagram. And the big reason I went out to, nationals is because I feel like just gets overlooked so often. And, no one in Illinois is really even aware it's happening. And so is there anything, you just want to tell all the listeners about what that experience is like going out to nationals, and just anything about last year's run to the championship?
Yeah, well, I think, hitting both of those, it's, last year was great winning the state championship again. It's, like I said all along, nobody knew who was going to get there. It was a total, throw the balls up in the air and see who was playing the best at that moment. And that's kind of exactly what happened as we got down the stretch. There were some hot teams, York in particular. They seem to, Matt gets them going every year. They find their game and their kind of bond right in the thick of things. So you can never discount anybody. And so for us, it was a very different experience being my second year in there. Some guys who were returning to go into a game feel like, hey, we got to play our style. We can't, let these guys have a revenge game against us. You see these teams a lot throughout the years, but it was a different experience. Getting out early in that game and having a lead versus the first year where it was so tight down to the last seconds was a very different feeling. But again, it doesn't, mean anything. It just means like, hey, that's the way the games can go sometime. But it was a great experience. Both years going to nationals were strong. It's something that is really exciting to do. It's something that's been done before. Programs have gone. They've, moved us into the prep division. So we play against prep schools like a Shattuck. Granted, you're not playing the Shattuck prep team. You're playing their U18 AAA team. But you are playing a lot of other teams' top prep team. So it is a very challenging tournament. I think for us, we have some guys that are very committed to other sports. And as the hockey director, I made a decision a long time ago to support that and let them play their other sports. So, hey, when it's hockey season, you're playing hockey. But once lacrosse starts or baseball or track or whatever it is that you are playing starts, you're committed to that. And, we got a lot of guys that are really top athletes in those other sports. So they can't miss that beginning of the season for them. They could be a captain or something. So we were a little shorthanded. Not that it's an excuse. It's just something that, we've talked about if, knock on wood, we're able to get there again, how we would handle it. And if, we were going to have a full squad, then I'm all about it. But if, guys are going to not be able to make it, then, maybe we let somebody else go. We think it is a tournament that should and can be won by one of the top teams in Illinois. So if we can't go with a full team, then we rather send somebody else. If whoever if we in that case end up beating somebody, we'd want them to go and give it the best shot for the SHL. And I mean that. It's like, you look at the talent pool throughout our league, throughout our state, it is so strong. The SHL just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Like I look through the teams, there is not an easy game on the schedule. Every game, if you don't have an A+ game, you're could walk out of there with a W. Those aren't just words. Like we really feel that as coaches, you get really nervous in these games. And like I said, you could be playing. It's happened to me. We lost to Barrington. I've seen an 0 in 2017 beat the top team. If you're not ready to go, somebody will catch you. And this year, I think it's just like that talent across the board is so good. Like you can look at any team and say, yeah, they have a shot.
Right.
So you want to send the best team because I do think at a national level, one of our teams could win that tournament. I felt like we were right there. We kind of ran out of gas against Shattuck the first year. I mean, it was a close game for about a period, and then we got our doors blown off. But, if we were full energy and feeling healthy, it could have been a different story. So I would love to win one of those one day. I think any team from the SHL or Illinois, for that matter, winning that is a big deal. certainly on the national scale, people look at that. And, I'm so proud of our league and our state and what we're doing that I only think it would warrant, the top team in our state winning that one year.
All right,
So
cool.
hopefully, Dylan, hopefully one day.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Long way to March, but thank you
Yeah.
so much again for coming on. Any last things you want people to walk away with?
I just think, hey, we got such a unique thing here, and I can't encourage kids strongly enough that if you can play for a high school and you can play in a good program, that this is, it's not what people always say high school hockey is. These are not like, hey, we're going out there and trying to beat each other up. It is a high skill level. At the top level at almost all schools, you got a lot of AAA players or high Central State players that have played that for years, and it is a very high level of hockey. And I get, reach outs all the time from juniors programs and colleges and people asking, hey, do you have kids? Your team looks really strong. Your league's really strong. And I just hope people, keep following this path because it can lead them to what they want to get to ultimately. And they can be doing it with their buddies in front of a big crowd, having a lot of fun doing it. So, um, you know, it's a great league. You know it, Dylan. You've been a part of it for a long time. It just keeps getting better, though. The coaches and the teams really make it a fun place to play, and really enjoy it.
Sweet. Well, yeah. Again, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate the time, and we'll see you very soon. And good luck this week on Thursday, Friday, Sunday.
I appreciate that. And to you guys, hey, this is awesome that you're doing this. People love it. I got so many reach outs to be like, hey, did you see that podcast? So I love it. Keep
We'll
going. That's
probably get
great
a
for
couple
us.
more this time.
Maybe probably a few more, but thank you guys for doing it. You do an awesome job.
Of course.
Absolutely.
All right, guys.
We'll see you later.
Take
Thanks,
care, guys.
Coach.
Bye bye. See you.
All right, that was head coach of Green, Adam Cheris. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. And again, we're going to try and have a guest on every single week. So we'll see who we get next week. We're going to try to have at least one representative of each team at some point throughout the season. So whether that is the head coach or someone else, that's our big goal. So we can cross New Trier off that checklist. Let's talk about week 2 in the SHL. So we've got 5 games, and they are all being played between the teams that already have gotten underway, except for Loyola. They're starting off their season on Sunday, but we'll get to that. First game of the week, Wednesday, September 25th. That's going to be Stevenson and Lake Forest at Lake Forest at Alumni Memorial Fieldhouse. So yeah, well, that's going to be an interesting game because Stevenson looking to go 2-0. They're playing a Lake Forest team who is 0-1-1. And we talked about how Lake Forest lost a lot last year. Stevenson has a lot from last year. You think the Patriots are going 2-0?
I think they could. Just the way that they played previously against York, they got that 4-2 win. I think York and Lake Forest, from just on paper, are very similar to each other. So if they keep that same performance as prior, they could definitely be 2-0.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game. Definitely one on my radar. And then Thursday, Friday, we have 2 relatively big games. So the first one, September 26th, 9:10 p.m. start at North Shore, which I said is my favorite rink. Oh, edit. That's going to come later in the podcast. All right, let's do. And then Thursday and Friday, we have one game on each night, 2 pretty big games. We have St. Ignatius and New Trier. That one's at 9:10 p.m. at North Shore Ice Arena. And then at the same rink, the next night at 8 p.m., the 27th, Friday, Glenbrook North comes in for their second game of the season. So New Trier Green and St. Ignatius, it's definitely bizarre for a pair of teams to play each other twice in the regular season already before we get to October. But this will be a rematch of the last meeting these 2 teams had on Sunday, the one Adam was talking about. New Trier won that one in overtime. Connor Herstritt had the goal. And these are, I mean, the standings are so misleading because there's such a difference in games played, but Right now, New Trier and St. Ignatius are 1-2, and they're both undefeated in regulation. I mean, it's too bad that game's at 9:10 p.m. If it was a little earlier, maybe I'd go out and check it out, but that's going to be a barn burner.
Hey, I mean, I steal my buddy's live barn accounts for a reason. That'll definitely be getting a check for sure. This is a huge game for St. Ignatius to potentially get some revenge, but now you're looking at New Trier being on the home side, and that's really important because you're looking at last Sunday, I believe it was New
Mhm.
Trier driving into Chicago. That's not fun. The travel's not fun. It can wear you out. Sunday night, you've already been watching a whole day of NFL football. I mean, I tell you what, it's going to be tough for St. Ignatius to try to return the favor and keep it as close as they did, but you never know with these types of tight teams. So that'll be very fun to watch, as
Yeah,
well
the
as
new
Friday for sure.
New Trier St. Ignatius. I don't have any scores off the top of my head, but I remember that being a really close season series last year. Like every game was close. I think there were one or two overtimes or shootouts in there. I think there was one where New Trier had the game-winning goal with like 2 minutes left. Uh, so yeah, I mean, definitely not natural rivals in the high school sports world, but now with St. Ignatius in their second year in the SHL, if they can really put together a good start to the season, this St. Ignatius New Trier could be an SHL rivalry in the making.
Oh, I mean, I think for sure it's not just off of history, it's off of battles and off of recent battles, like you mentioned. It's just been tight, and I think it could very much continue that narrative this year. So, I mean, you bullseyed it there for sure.
All right, then Glenbrook North, New Trier Green. It will be their first SHL meeting, but it will be a rematch. They played earlier this season in the preseason invitational. GBN had a 2-0 lead in that game. New Trier came back to tie it and then win it in a shootout. So I'm definitely interested in that game as well. Glenbrook North made the semifinal of that preseason invitational, and they were one shootout goal away against GBS from playing New Trier in the championship game. Uh, I mean, Glenbrook North is always going to be a team that's you're going to have circled when you play them. They've been historically good. They are 0-1 though, so they definitely want to at least get a point on the board, I would imagine, here against New Trier Green because they played St. Ignatius and now they're playing New Trier. And anytime you lose to New Trier, you can kind of walk away and say, all right, well, they were probably the team that was supposed to win. Um, but I mean, you just got to think that the Spartans are thinking about that game, that 2-0 lead they had, how they were, a shootout away from beating New Trier Green. And yeah, I just think Spartans would love to get 2 points on the board, and I think they have a chance.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are the two teams that I had at the top of my, preseason power rankings. I had New Trier at one, I
Yeah.
had GBN at two, I had St. Ignatius at three, and we're all seeing them within a close proximity because New Trier plays St. Ignatius on Thursday, and then Glenbrook North takes on New Trier on Friday. So it's going to be a very tight, contested, fun weekend for sure. And that is probably my personal game of the week, just because Glenbrook North definitely has a chance to win. You're catching New Trier, although they have a deep number of players, you're catching them on a back to back. And whether you're catching the Chicago Blackhawks on a back to back or a youth hockey club on a back to back, it's going to have a similar impact. So don't
Yeah.
mind my dog barking.
I kind of like that personal game of the week coming into every week where we just say what we think will be the most exciting game. I'm a fan of that. Let's make that happen. Let's make
Yeah,
that happen.
let's do it.
And then finally, no games on Saturday, which is very strange in the
Very
SHL, but
rare.
everyone can
Yes.
enjoy their Saturday off. We do have two on Sunday. New Trier in action again. It will be their sixth game of the season. Um, it's already 1/5 of the way done with their season. New Trier will be after this week, which is crazy to think in terms of games played, obviously. They'll be playing Fenwick, and so Coach Adam just talked about it. Fenwick is not gonna, can't take them lightly this season at all. I mean, you can't take any team lightly in the SHL, period. But Fenwick, I mean, they're hot right now. Good start to the season. Scoring first in every game, not allowing a goal in the first period. And they're going to be on home ice at the Edge against New Trier. This is going to be a very intriguing result for me. I'm looking forward
Oh,
to see what
I
happens.
mean, no doubt about it. I think just not only is what when you're hot like this, not only is your gameplay hot, but your confidence is hot. And this is a Fenwick team that probably walked in to play New Trier last year and was like, "Oh, I hope we make it close." I mean, to be honest with you, just considering their record, but now that they have just kind of rolled through competition so far, they have beliefs, and if you can believe it, you can have it. I think Fenwick will at least make things tight, but once again, you never know because New Trier is just such a strong organization.
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing what Fenwick can do in that game. And then finally, at 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 29th, down at Fifth Third in Chicago, St. Ignatius will be home against Loyola Gold. And that will be Loyola Gold's first game of the season. They always start a little bit on the later side because I know that they go up to Canada to play that tournament. Um, the first SHL game, Loyola is never not going to be a preseason favorite. Although we talked about how they might be a dark horse to drop a couple spots in the standings, and they are playing that St. Ignatius team at the time, undefeated in regulation. We'll see what happens against New Trier on Thursday, but that is going to be another big game, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Loyola comes out in their first game. I'm going to actually call that my personal game of the week, that Loyola versus St. Ignatius game. And also, that is a natural rivalry. We talk about, the SHL is a different kind of conference. Really, high school hockey in general does not follow the standard Illinois conference lineup. So you get a lot of unnatural rivalries that form in the SHL between teams that play each other multiple times a season in hockey, but sometimes never at all in any other sports. This, I think, is a really good rivalry, and it always has been. And now that St. Ignatius is in the SHL, this is their second year. It's just going to grow, and this is going to be the first edition of this rivalry this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried about Loyola. I wonder how they're going to do because I almost it's too early to think that, but I'm not sure about my prediction on Loyola. I had them dropping a few spots on paper. They should be, but once again, it's Loyola. They're bringing in a lot of good players from that AHL team. So this is going to be, and I respect your game of the week decision because this is a very unpredictable score. We don't know
Yes.
what to expect. So that's a game that'll definitely have me on my heels as well. And hopefully Loyola uses my talk as motivation. Because sometimes I like being proven wrong?
Yeah, right? Uh, Okay, so yeah, that's it for this week. And then next week, so Loyola will start on Sunday. Next week, Glenbrook South will start on Friday. And the week after that, on October 10th, that is the opening game for Carmel, which is insane because especially I think the SHL season started on September 11th. So that is a full month
That,
after
yep,
the
whole
first
month.
game of the
That's
season.
that's insane.
Yeah, it's going to be very congested for them down the stretch. And I'm just looking forward to getting to the point of the season where the standings are actually kind of valid and teams all have, around the same, maybe give or take 3, 5 games. But still, like every team has enough games played where you can look at the standings and make sense of it. We're not quite there yet. Um, with York having 2 points. They're ahead of Stevenson, who's 1-0. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how these standings shake up. And like you said about that game, it's a very unpredictable score. I think just from what I'm seeing in the SHL so far this year, it's going to be very unpredictable. Like the standings, I think we're in for some surprises.
Oh yeah, even coach talked about it, like how
Yeah.
there's just so much parity in the league this year. Something I brought up in week one. It's just very obvious to notice when you take a little bit of a deep dive and you realize, wow, this is going to be one heck of a season. So it's a good time to start this podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah. And especially in a league where 8 teams make the playoffs out of 11 teams, um, you know, there's definitely some seasons where you kind of know what those 8 teams are going to be in like late November, December. I'm really looking forward to the playoff race because I don't think we've had a playoff race in the SHL for the last spot that got past like early January. I'm looking forward to some like last week games that are, maybe 3 teams are in contention for that last spot. I'm just really looking forward. It's going to be a really fun season.
Absolutely. A lot of teams could be fighting for that, mid bottom of the barrel. So you nailed it all there.
All right, so we've got a couple segments that we're adding in that you did not see on week 1, but we're going to try and make this a weekly thing. So we're going to start with question of the week, and we're going to have our own answers to this. But the big thing is we want you to write in the comments your answer to this question. And we're going to pick the best answer or our favorite answer, and we're going to just discuss it after, on week 3's podcast, and then give you a shout out as well. So the question of the week for week 2 is, what is your favorite rink in the state of Illinois and why? And this is a completely open-ended question. You can go anywhere. You can go to the ice, the facilities, the locker rooms, the location, the stands, whatever you want, whatever makes it your favorite rink, and then make sure you let us know why in the comments section. But then we could just give our answers now. Luke, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's been a tough thought, honestly, because when you really factor in all the attributes, it's tough. But, from personal experience back when we used to play in the gold division, we used to play Fox Valley all the time. And
Mm.
just there was a game where we played, actually, it was Fox Valley senior night. And it was really cool because you would look up into the Fox Valley Ice Arena, the rink of the Chicago Steel.
Mm.
And it was, pretty, I'd say it's about half capacity, which is pretty good for a USHL barn.
Oh, so you guys
And
played on the steel
yeah,
rink.
so we played on the steel
Nice.
rink, and it just gives you that professional feel. You just look out, there's a decent amount of people watching you. The penalty boxes are on the other side, which is something I've always really liked. I don't know
Mm.
why.
Me
Just from
too.
a playing standpoint, I feel like if somebody does something dumb, they should go all the way across from their bench just to have that like stare down of shame.
And then
But
also, like, these guys are getting on the ice just to go back to the bench. Make them work for it. Make them figure out
absolutely,
that they
yeah.
have
And
to.
I like that too because when you do commit a penalty, you're waved right back out onto the ice instead of typically to the bench. It depends on where the puck is located though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the locker rooms are very nice. And just the experience in general. I have a lot of nostalgia from playing as a youth hockey player there. So for me personally, I would say probably the Fox Valley Ice Arena in not sure if where exactly it's okay. I think it's Geneva, Illinois,
Geneva,
but I
yeah.
mean, yeah, it's a fun place to be at for sure. So, Dylan?
All right. Well, mine is going to be a much different approach because for me, I never played hockey, so it's going to have nothing to do with the ice, locker rooms, and all that. So I'm mostly thinking about the broadcasting setup and my view of the game and just everything like that. So, man, I was really debating between Mount Prospect and North Shore. I think I'm gonna have to go to North Shore Ice Arena out of Northbrook, Illinois, and
Yeah, that's a
it,
sweet view.
yeah, it's not everyone's favorite rink just based on what I've heard people talk about, but if you know that rink, you know that between the benches, right above the penalty box area, there's that wooden like booth. It's like 20 feet in the air, and you're just looking down, and you have just literally the best view you can possibly have. And there's no netting. You're on the same side of the benches as the benches, so you can look out and see all the fans like out there up against the glass instead of them being on the same side as you. And that rink's just always gonna have a very special place in my heart. When I was a senior in high school, that was the rink of my first ever hockey broadcast. It was GBS versus New Trier Green at that rink, and that just everything about it, that setup, the kind of closed tight space, low ceiling. It gets really loud in there. There's been plenty of Loyola versus New Trier games over there over the years, as it being a home ice of New Trier. But yeah, for me, for those reasons, I think it has to be my favorite, North Shore. And that's
Honorable
an
mention for
interesting
me.
ring too, because that's New Trier's home, but New Trier has three homes.
Yes, they have multiple homes.
Yeah.
I've played New Trier Blue. I've played New Trier White. I've never played New Trier Green. Thank God, because we would get hammered. But I will say, yeah, it just depends. There will be games where we go play at Winnetka. There will be games we go play at North Shore. Same thing with Loyola. I believe they have two rinks as well. They
Is that
play
right?
out of maybe they
I know they
don't.
have
They play out of
Heartland.
Portland. Oh, maybe they don't have anywhere else. I was thinking of Chicago North. I'm stuck in the combined mode
Yeah.
because that's all I lived
Oh
for the
yeah, because
past four
Chicago North
years.
does
So
play at Heartland.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, but Fenwick also has two because they have Ridgeland and the Edge.
yes.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's the question. Drop a comment. Tell us your favorite rink and why, and we're gonna pick the best answer. And don't forget that why part because that's what makes it worth commenting. If you're just gonna say a rink, then we could have just made a poll or something. So let us know why, and we'll decide who has the best answer. So now we're gonna talk about something which is the name of the podcast. I think I said in week one we're in our Utah Hockey Club era right now with this podcast.
Yes.
Does not have a name yet. So we're gonna pitch three names to you people, and you guys are gonna get to decide what it's called. So we're gonna put the vote in the comments section on this YouTube video. We're not gonna do it on Instagram. We're not going to do it on any other platform because we want these votes to be the people that are actually coming and watching this podcast. So yeah, we're going to give you three options, and you guys can let us know what you think. Whatever has the most votes coming into our filming session on Monday will be the name of the podcast. So I'll speak on behalf of Max Anderson. Me, Luke, and Max Anderson have all pitched a name. So I'll speak on behalf of Max. His name is The Locker Room, which I like. I like. But let's hear what you have to say, Luke.
I came up with the Scholastic Sit Down. I was actually just in class today. I was like, I'm still stumped on a name to think of. So then I tried to use different terms. I was like, what can I do with Scholastic? And I was like, wait a second, Scholastic Sit Down has a little rhythm to it. I'm not huge on it, but if it was our name, I wouldn't be upset for sure.
Yeah, I really like that one. And then my idea was just going to be the shell or the shell pod or something along those lines. Probably just the shell. But the idea behind that one is I'm sure many people watching this know that shell is kind of like a shortened, abbreviated nickname for the NHL video game. So, what would be the SHL's variant of that? Shell, and then it could be kind of like a shell logo of some kind. I'm still brainstorming it, but that is my submission. So those are going to be your three options. So make sure you vote in the comments. We're just going to leave a comment with the SHL Network YouTube of each one, and whatever comment has the most likes is the one we'll go with. So again, you can vote from now until Monday of next week, which I believe is going to be the 30th of September. So let us know what you guys all think, and whatever wins will be the name. I'm excited to see how that vote goes.
Yeah, me too. I think it's very important you explained the definition of shell because I was like, what is this guy talking about? And then he's like,
Yeah, well,
shell, but for shell or for the SHL. And I was like, oh, so it's a lot of creativity. It's a lot of behind the scenes that makes you think like, oh, light bulb
yeah,
in the
right.
back of your head. But I think that's a great idea too. So this will be a fun vote for sure.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap things up with another new segment we're gonna do every week, which is trivia. So we're gonna ask, and this is another opportunity for you to leave comments and get involved watching at home. We're gonna ask a trivia question at the end of every podcast, and it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be something relatively obscure. Maybe you can't find the answer online. Uh, maybe you have to go talk to people to see if you can figure it out. But whoever is the first person to comment the correct answer will also get a shout out on the following episode. So we're gonna have question of the week and trivia every week. We're gonna shout out two people, whoever gets the trivia question right and our favorite answer for question of the week. So the question, and we're going to start kind of easy, and you're going to see what I mean by this is hard, because this is going to be a hard question, but it is easy in the grand scheme of things. The question is, who led the SHL in points in the regular season in 2021-2022? So that is the first season coming out of the COVID season, right? So who led the SHL regular season in points? And I will give you a hint. It came down to 1 point that separated two players at the end of the season. But so first person to give the correct answer in the comments will get a shout out. Best of luck to everyone finding it out there. Luke, do you have anything else you want to get off your chest here?
Something I want to say for sure is if you're watching this and you know you have somebody or yourself that would like to sponsor this podcast, we are going to start looking into that for sure. So, I
Absolutely.
mean, anybody who reaches out to the SHL network will be, taken in for decision. And we'd love to have you be a sponsor on this podcast because we feel that, we love to have sponsors, but also we'd love to promote you while we do our thing. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
that's all I got, Dylan. Other than that,
And there's such a wide variety, that we can do with that. We can have reads that we might not necessarily be able to have time for on a live broadcast, but we can just, we can read whatever you got. You can have like a logo on screen. You can, you can sponsor particular segments. Even you can sponsor the guest segment or the preview segment or anything. We don't really have like anything set in stone on how it's going to look, but if you are interested, make sure you reach out. My email is on the SHL website on the contact page. You can also reach out to Max Anderson about that. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Luke.
yeah, just you can put whatever you want. Just if you really want to put Luke Jorden sucks, just make sure you pay for it, okay?
Yeah. Imagine that in the corner of our podcast for every single episode. That'd be great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, we will see you next week on Tuesday. Make sure to answer that trivia question. Which rink is your favorite? And vote on what the podcast should be called. And when we see you next, we'll introduce the podcast as whatever the name is. So have a great week, everybody. And we'll see what happens with all the games.